Okay, we'll get started. So thank you very much for joining me this morning. My name's Lucinda White. I'm the Director of Pure Awards and I'm working with the University of Derby with the Create Growth programme. So part of that is to deliver some knowledge sharing regarding funding and to offer support for trying to unlock some of the funding opportunities that are out there for the creative people in the room and beyond. So today we're just going to run for probably about 45 minutes to an hour at the most. There will be an opportunity to ask questions towards the end if nothing is covered already through the webinar itself. Please use the chat box if you do have any questions. We can review those towards the end. I'm not very good at having a look at those, responding to those and then going back into it. So I think we'll go through the webinar and then see if there's anything missing or if anybody wants to ask anything at that point, if that's okay. Okay, so let's get going. So what we're going to cover today is just an overview of the fund itself, how to start even thinking about putting some words down on paper to make it make sense, the actual application system itself, key sections of the application, the main wordy sections, and that will be an opportunity then where you can ask some questions and just sort of, if you've got any experience of writing it before, or perhaps you haven't got any experience at all and you've got an idea and you just want to share it, we can respond to anything particularly then. And then again, at the end, if there's any other questions to go through at that point. Okay, so the overview. So developing your creative practice is obviously something that's set up by the Arts Council. It's been going for quite a long time now, and it's particularly for individuals to apply to help fund the development of their own creative practice. It does what it says on the tin. You can get up to 12,000 for the year, and it gives you a real chance to spend a dedicated period of time to focus on your own cultural and creative development. It really is to enable a step change in that development of your practice. So it isn't just about paying for you to just tick along doing a bit of artwork or doing a bit of creative activity that you love to do. It really is about that journey of where you are now, where you would like to be. That's your main goal and your aim. And this fund is going to give you the resources financially and physically to be able to get that change and open up and unlock other opportunities for you in the future. So that's really it in a nutshell. The access costs here, as it's stated, are over and above the 12,000, which is the maximum amount that you can apply for. So if you do, if you have any needs such as you're deaf or some disabilities or things like that, then you can apply for additional support financially to help fund the extra resources you might need. Equally, if your target audience of who you're wanting to present your work to have those needs, whether it's mental health conditions or long-term illnesses and things like that, then if that's the target audience that you're working with, then you may be able to access more personal access costs to cover for that, for them to be able to engage with your work better as well. So as we go along, you'll probably be able to see a little bit more about that and see where that fits in on the actual application process as well. Okay, so the funding priorities of the fund are creative development, projects that enhance artistic practice and skill development, innovation and experimentation, so support for innovative and experimental work, public engagement, so projects that engage audiences and communities in whatever way and size and form that might be, and collaboration and networking, so the opportunities that foster collaboration within with other people in the arts sector. So, a visual artist might want to collaborate with a photographer or a dancer or somebody like that, to create much more, an exciting new piece of work. So the disciplines that are covered in this, we have music, theatre, dance, visual arts, literature, libraries, combined arts, music, museums practice. They do allow for other practices as well, as they've put here in the paragraph underneath. So, if you're using technology and creative media in your practice, then that might work as well. Virtual reality, or augmented reality. You might work with sports or science, to create something a little bit different and a bit artistic and a bit unusual. Or you may be going out to put your artwork, whether it's a performance or whether it's music or art or something, going into care homes or places like that. So it's about, the practice that you do and how you're taking that out into the community and to your audiences. So the people who can apply, number of people here listed. I'm not going to go through everything because you can read, obviously, but there are some key restrictions and specifics regarding this application as well. So it is very much about the individual. It's it's not about an organization applying. So me as Pure Awards, for instance, if I was a visual artist, I wouldn't be able to apply as the business, but I could apply for myself individually as a person. If you're a sole trader, again, you need to make the application as in an individual capacity. So not on behalf of the company, but as you as a person. So the bank account has to be in your name that they would put the money into, not into the business bank account that would then pay you in effect to do what you do. You need to be based in England, got to be 18 years old, and you must have at least 1 year's creative practice experience outside of the formal education context. So hopefully it's relatively straightforward. I think as long as you tick some of these boxes, you can tick the discipline, you can tick the type of work that you do, and that you can tick all of those, then there's no reason why you shouldn't think that you couldn't apply for this. So before we start kind of going into the full application itself, I think it's worth looking at the structure of how you're going to do things. And actually, this is good practice for anything that you're going to do anyway. And I would approach the application in this way, which they have indicated is a good starting point anyway. And I do agree. I think, it's important to have this knowledge of everything around you, of what this project is all about and what this developmental practice is, before you even put anything down onto the application form itself, because this, in essence, will give you a really strong structure of where you're at, and it will enable you to use those nuggets of information in this particular funding opportunity, but it will give you much more clarity around how you go forward and how you're presenting yourself in this fund, but also in potential other funds as well, or other opportunities. So I'd look at what will your activity be and how long it will take. So is it a 6-month project? Is it a 12-month project? Make a note of that. And what is it that you're actually going to do? Are you going to, in terms of a visual artist, for instance, are you going to learn a new technique? And how is that going to look then in terms of that process of you learning that new technique? And why? Ultimately, the question is, why do you want to take this period of development, and why now? What's that going to give you at the end of it? Where's that going to help you develop and build your artistic practice in the future? And why now? Have you come to a certain cap of where you are with your technique and your abilities? Have you seen an opportunity, a trend perhaps that's emerging in your area, that you think, actually, I need to learn this, I want to learn this, and I want to be able to harness this so I can develop and grow as an artist personally. And I know that there's lots of people who are interested in this kind of work at the moment. So actually, in order for me to progress financially in my business and my practice, but also, holistically, in terms of supporting the audiences that are wanting this kind of work now as well, then how is that, is this fund the right fund to be able to take me to that next level, give me the resources I need in order to train, research and learn this new technique. Try and give a one-line summary of your development activities. So I think this might be quite hard, so you might want to come back to this at the end. So once you've actually written everything, and then you'll find that one line that might just fit perfectly and just explains everything. So often we do this with introductions and conclusions. You write the body of the work first, and then you create your introduction, then you create your conclusion. Because then you've got that full block of information there, and then you can pick out the highlights of that to put in the top and the bottom. And it's similar to do this one-line summary as well. So don't get stuck on creating that one line straight away. Try and flush all the other information bits out first, and then that'll give you that highlight moment for you. How much will your development activity cost? So the budget is absolutely critical, and you'll see a little bit later on when we go through and look at the Grantium system itself, the detail and what you need to be able to put into that. If you've not done an Arts Council application before, then they're quite specific on the funding, and they'll allocate it out in not just numbers but in percentages of allocation of that budget to certain areas and costs. So if your project is more than what you're asking them for, which is why they say, how much do you need from us? If your project is 20,000, but maximum you can get is 12 from here, then they will ask you, where are you going to make up that shortfall? So be mindful of that, or try and focus your project to be within that 12,000, and then you don't have to do any explaining at all. So what are the main things you want to achieve, and how will you know whether you've achieved these goals? So this is kind of a monitoring. It's like a goals and outcomes, and then monitoring of those towards the end. So it's really clear. So maybe try and write down 3 key things that you want to achieve from this. And how will you know you've achieved them? So, well, if you learn this technique and you've spent some time implementing this technique, and it's created a piece of work using that technique that has then been purchased or has been visited or been attended for the performance of that work, then that will be a stepstone in change and being able to show that you've achieved that, and actually it's been a successful achievement of that. In terms of milestones, then that's the plan. Now on the system, which we'll talk about in a moment, is a very detailed kind of, almost, I would suggest, putting down a timeline journey of what your project over the next 12 months will look like from, say, January through to December next year. Really make it clear as to what you're going to do in month 1 and what that actually is and how long it's going to take, because these are the questions. This is where you can get stuck a bit, I think, because you'll find that, you've got this idea, but you're not actually sure how you're going to do it. What they want to know is how you are actually going to do it, in order to make sure that the money that you're receiving is managed well, effectively, and has been fully thought out and thought through all the way from the start to the finish. Now, the first couple of months might be purchase some resources, spend some time researching, identifying the courses to go on. Month 2 and 3 might be attending courses, or going on a field trip, or going on a residential trip, or something like that, to go and identify or work with a particular artist that you want to learn from. Month 4 and 5 might be doing the research, like doing the implementation of that knowledge and building a body of work that you can do. Then 6 and 7, it might be promoting your next exhibition or performance. And then 8 and 9 might be the actual delivery of the performance, for example. But it needs to be really thought through from start to finish. So the application process itself, if anybody's not started it yet and is definitely interested in going ahead with this, then you need to get onto their Grantium system. The application form, it's all online, and you need to register on there first, and then it takes up to 5 days for your registration to be verified in order for you to progress to the next stage. So you've got to go through the eligibility process first, and then you get onto the next level. Once you're in there, then you'll be able to, go for the application, go through the full application form itself. It's quite straightforward, but it's got a lot of elements to it. And you need to make sure that you answer every single part. And there's a summary part at the end, which you'll see which bits you've done, which you've got a tick, and which you haven't. And it won't, you won't submit until you've ticked everything on there. So you know where you're at with it all. And it will always take you back to the bit that they need to complete as well. So the deadline on this is towards the end of August. So I would suggest that you start registering today, and then you can get that ball rolling if you haven't done already. So this is the application portal website address, and this is what it looks like. It's not very nice looking. So from people who are coming from a visual artist or a creative background, it's not very pretty, I'm afraid. But it is what it is. It's got lots of information on there. It feels a little bit like, you know, archaic in lots of ways. But, you know, it is what it is. It does a job. So once you've got through onto it, you get then your login system, which is on the left, and you go into it, and then you're presented with this. So on the left-hand side, as you'll see, you've got the different things from application submission. So you've got your different elements there and the different sections that you need to complete. So this is why once you're in there, you can see exactly what's needed. And I think that's part of understanding what they're looking for, is understanding all the different elements and how to piece that together. So the sooner you can start on this process, the better, really. So your activity start dates, obviously you can put in whatever you need. So whether it's the 1st of January to the 31st of December 2005, fine. You know, just put those in, click save and next. Then your activity focus. So for me, obviously I was just ticking things through, putting some dummy stuff in there just to give you an example of what that looks like in order to get through to the next stage. So what do you want to focus on? So is it building new networks for future development, presentation of works, creating new work, experimenting with collaborators, international travel to explore practice to work with mentors, professional development activities, research or development time to explore practice or take risks, you know, which is the one thing that a key part of what you're doing and what you're creating with this project. Again, if you've got this written down separately, you can just reflect it all back into the application process, and it makes it nice and clear for you. This one is tell us about yourself and your creative practice. So really, I mean, 1,800 characters, you're probably looking at what, sort of 300 and odd words, 325 words, something like that. You don't want to go too overboard with the wording. It's not ridiculous, but there's a lot of points there. So I would suggest, you know, this shouldn't be the hardest part, because this is talking about you. So when you're starting to build this, write down as much as you possibly can under each of these headers. You're probably not going to use it all, but you'll be able to pick out the highlight parts from each section. So if you've say got, you know, 400 words and there's how many lists, there's what, 7 things there, you know, you need to make sure that you've got everything covered, but it doesn't give you a lot of word count to be able to explain everything. So do it separately on a different Word document, write all about yourself, all about your creative practice, but use those headings to help you define what that is. And then you can feed it back in to create the 350 words or whatever for that particular answer. You know, yeah, it's not a challenging one, this one. I wouldn't say, you know, you need to be too, you know, to worry about this one too much, because it's about you. It's relatively straightforward. Like I say, yeah, here are your key points here. You know, it's just setting the scene of who you are, your experience, the kind of work that you've done before, the vision that you've got for where you want to be, you know, and the achievements that you've had so far in what you do. The next part is about the development. So this is the key thing that they want to understand, is like, where is this development going to take you in your practice? So the first part is tell us about the developmental opportunity you want to undertake, what you hope to get out of it, and how you will go about it. So things to think about, which these aren't things that you absolutely should put in, but you should, at least, if you can't fit them all in, then at least pick out 2 or 3 of them that you can, that are relevant to you. So what is it that you want to do? You want to develop your particular practice by maybe going and doing 6 months research, and then 6 months implementation of that knowledge, training and understanding of that new practice that you're doing. You know, if it means that you do like a one-off research trip within that, that's great. But actually, you know, don't just let it fund that, because actually it's a waste of resource then. It's a much bigger process here, isn't it? That, you know, doing a research trip abroad or even in the country is absolutely valuable, but that's not the end goal. That's not the finish line, is it? That's part of the whole narrative, part of that journey that you're going to take from the start to the finish. So, you know, what are the opportunities that will benefit your development, and how are you going to identify those? Are you going to do some research time? Are you going to go online? Are you going to connect? Are you going to, you know, start following some other artists who do that particular practice that you're looking at doing, or that technique that you want to start using? You know, are you going to engage with them? Are you going to interview them? Are you going to attend some of their shows, or performances or exhibitions? You know, how does that look? How are you going to identify those opportunities to go and train or learn from those other people, or that particular technique? You know, when it talks about the ambitiousness of the activity, you know, this is where you need to be quite careful as well, because we've got big plans for your practice. You know, you want to do some amazing work with it, and you've got big ideas of where you want to be in, say, 5 years' time. This is actually a part of that. So yes, it is an ambitious plan to deliver all of that, but don't fall foul of doing too much in that 1 year. I mean, if we just think how quickly these last 7 months have gone, and just think, God, if we've got the funding next year to apply all of what we want to achieve, the realistic part of it, we need to come down to being a bit more realistic about the activity and how much we can achieve on a month-by-month basis. So that's where the plan part of it comes in, and being able to nail down exactly, well, what's achievable here? Because how ambitious is it? Is it, you know, if it's something that's going to reach out to lots and lots of audiences, and you want to do seven shows and things, is that realistic in this point? You know, is it possible to do that? Is it easier to say we're going to do 2 shows towards the end of the year, having done this, and this in advance of that? You know, the plans in place to access the networks that you want to work with, you know, how does that look? So are you connecting? Are you part of other arts groups? Are you part of other groups and professionals in that industry that you will allow you to build those networks and build those people around you and that support? Your development continued. So this is like a 2-staged part of the application. So why is this important for your practice at this point, and how will this help create future opportunities? So what are your main aims of the activity? Why is it the right point to take some development time? So obviously this is development time. It's not practicing time. So this is the time when you're really working on you, on your practice, on your skills, on your techniques, on your, you know, on everything that you do about your artwork or your art form. And it's about taking it to that next level. So this isn't about necessarily doing lots and lots of performances and shows and things like that. It is about really learning and developing you in your technique and your abilities. And then we need to demonstrate where that's going to lead you to. So is it going to unlock opportunities to work with other artists, to perhaps do other exhibitions in a bigger space, to perhaps present your work to a bigger audience or a different audience that's really showing interest in that side of the work? You know, what's the change that's going to happen really? And what will be different about your practice as a result of this development? So really be able to demonstrate, okay, this is where we are now with this development opportunity here. We're going to be able to learn about this, and this, and this is going to enable us to achieve this, and this. So at the end of that process. The public engagement side of things, it's not asking for any more narrative around it other than this. So is it making work to present or show to the public, to reach new audiences, to develop networks, to increase opportunities to present work, or other? So, you know, you can just click whichever is absolutely relevant for you with that one. The outcomes, linking it to the Let's Create outcomes here. So just choose from the following list. That's so that they can ensure that they've not got 100% of the people they're funding just in creative people, or 100% in cultural communities. They, as a funder, want to make sure that their outcomes are being delivered by a sort of a good cross range of artists and creative practitioners. So they just need to know that for their monitoring more than anything. But it's good to have an awareness of what those outcomes are from their Let's Create program as well. So the work itself, you will be asked to present and put attachments in of pieces of your work that you've previously done. Again, you have to have been doing and producing work for at least a year. So if this year isn't right, then get making some work ready for next year. You've got a year, so you'll be able to create that. But if it is the right time now, then, you know, add your attachments, all those pieces of work. I think, you know, it's one document to demonstrate your work. So, you know, create that in Canva or some other, you know, sort of artistic platform that you can put your information and your work into there. And one supporting document, again, you know, that could be, I'm not quite sure how that would be different, to be honest. A supporting document might be some reviews of your previous work. It could be, you know, and images of exhibitions and things that you've done, write-ups in the newspaper, anything like that might be useful for the supporting document as well. So for the funding side of things, this is where, you know, you're going to be asked to create the fund basically and the budget plan here. So you need to say how much money you want. So I've just put in £10,000 for here, and how much is for personal access costs as well. So for myself, it was 0, but you might be different. You need to find out how much those extra costs might be, whether it's for a deaf translator, deaf interpreter, somebody like that, or, you know, other resources and individuals and things that you might need to help create your project and bring it to fruition. So how does your organization object to receiving national lottery funding for religious reasons? Again, that's entirely up to you. So then we can go on to the next part. So this is your budget. So again, I would separate this and put it onto an Excel spreadsheet first and outline using their headings here. Is it an artistic and creative cost? Is it an overhead? So, you know, have you got rent to pay? Have you got utilities, costs and things like that? Or is it some assets, materials, equipment, instruments, that sort of thing? If you try and use those as your key headers, and then underneath each one, put in what it actually is. So it will be your creative, you know, as the creator and the creative practitioner costs. You know, will it be to buy some art materials, or will it be to go and do, you know, fund the trip away? How much is that going to cost? Have you got insurance that you need to pay for? Have you got particular qualifications that you might want to access and get accredited for, and what those costs might look like? So if you start building your budget on an Excel spreadsheet using these expenditure headings, then when you go to transfer it across, you'll be able to see how it fits in, and then they automatically work out what the percentage is. So once you've done that, makes it really clear and easy to just copy and paste across. So the activity plan. So this is where, when I was talking at the beginning, that you need to have nailed down on a bit of a timeline of what your project actually is going to look like. This is, you know, it's not trying to be anything to kind of get you unstuck from it, but they just need to know that you know what you're going to be doing with that money, because ultimately, you know, it's public money. It's coming to you, and to be spent appropriately on developing you as an individual to maximize your opportunities as a creative practitioner. So, you know, what is going to happen? So in month 1, you know, at this point, you're going to start it, and at this point, you're going to finish it. So I think on the next page, it sort of shows, no, maybe it doesn't. So each activity, if you see just where it says show filters, underneath there, there's a little plus sign and like a page. So if you just here, I don't know if you can see that with my cursor, just here is where you click to add in new activities that you're doing. And it might be, you know, initially it's just purchasing, it's just doing research, it's spending time identifying what the opportunities are. maybe attending a networking event, attending an exhibition or a gallery, doing an interview with somebody, just to start getting that ball rolling in terms of what you're going to do. You know, and then what's that timeline look like? And then feed that into the dates. And that gives you that structure of everything you're going to do for the next year with that funding, which is great because it means it's all mapped out and it's really clear for them, but also clear for you in how you're going to do that. Because this ultimately will be monitored towards the end of it as well as to how you spent the money, making sure that, you know, everything went to plan. And if it didn't go to plan, you can say why, and you've got justification around that. So helping evaluate the programme. This is where the information is not going to be used to decide whether you're offered a grant or not. You know, it's just purely for their side of things, just to identify where it fits in with what they're funding, basically. So would you estimate your total income to be in the past 12 months? You can give an example there. There's different drop downs. And then what percentage of your income in the last 12 months would you estimate came from your practice? So, you know, it doesn't have to be huge. It could be all of it if that's what you're doing for your day job and you're making money from it, but you want to develop yourself further. That's fine. That's just purely so they know where the funding is going to and how many people they're funding from scratch and how many existing practitioners they're developing for the future. So as I said, over this part, this is your summary sheet. So this is the checklist of everything that you need before you can submit it. You won't be able to submit until all the points are ticked with a yes. And that will show you, so on the links below where we've got the notes and the bullet points, it will show you and it will take you to exactly that part of the document that you need to go to. You can export it all into PDF so you can look at it properly. You can review everything that's in there before you click submit. So I would really recommend that when you're doing an application like this, you sort of almost carve your time into 3 elements. So the first part is gathering your information, getting it out your head onto paper, making some kind of sense of it, exploring what the application process looks like, really getting a feel for all that first. The second part is actually making it make sense for the actual application itself. So making that word count fit correctly, making sure that it explains everything fully, that that budget is done right, that the timeline is done right, that you've got your attachments and supporting materials all there ready to go. And then the final part, obviously, is uploading it all onto the system, reviewing it, making sure that it all makes sense and making sure that everything is in there that you need it to be. And then once you've done that, the only thing next to do is to really submit it. So it is a 3-step process. And I think the sooner you can start it, the better. It just gives you that good overview. And I think now it's, you know, the elements within this application, it's not rocket science. It's not hugely challenging in terms of an application, but I appreciate if you've never done it before, you know, it's going to be a bit overwhelming. The good thing about this is they're only asking for about 350 words. The bad thing about it is they're only asking for 350 words, because once you start writing and putting everything down there that you want to do, you'll find you'll have way more words than what you actually are allowed to put in there. So then it's a process of editing, filtering it down and making sure that you're really bringing out the only key points. And in order to do that, if you're struggling with word count, don't be afraid to use bullet points to be really clear on what it is that you're presenting or answering. You know, be concise, be to the point. You don't need to use lots of flowery language. You don't need to over exaggerate things. You need to be really clear to the point, because if you're imagining the funders are getting a lot of these applications, you know, at this moment in time, if yours can stand out as being clear, defined, results orientated, focused, answering the question, that's what they want to hear. So it's harder for artists generally to be able to do that, because, you know, we like to be a little bit more fluid. We like to be a little bit more expressive in how we're going to do things. And we want that passion to come through. But ultimately, it does need to answer the question as well. So you do need to kind of click your methodical brain into focus to be able to respond to this. And we're more than happy to provide you with the support that you might need once you've written the outline and the backbone of this application. Please do use the resources within us here and Banks Mill to be able to have a look at that and give you some pointers as to maybe where you could refine it, or, you know, kind of bring some additional detail in, or clarify some things that you know in your head, but you perhaps struggle to get out on paper. So that's kind of the culmination of the overview of the system, the application, and what's required. If anybody's got any questions, I don't know if I've covered everything that people want, or if people want to unmute, you know, we can just answer any specific questions that you might have regarding this, the process, the additional support that you might be able to access through us. Please just, you know, start putting it in the chat box or unmute and you know, let me know what you want. If you have, so can current students apply for it? If you have got a year's, so it's got to be a year's worth of work outside of an education context, hasn't it? So I would say probably not in that respect, because it's got to be applied to somebody who's come out of the education program and actually been working in their practice for a year. So is that you who's in that, Venus? Are you in that situation where you're a current student, or are you doing this outside of your student time? You can unmute if you need to. Is there somewhere that I can find out examples of costs for access needs? If you go on the website, they've got a whole section about access needs and how much you can apply for and that sort of thing. But if you imagine what you might need, if it's your access needs that you need, then you know, just do some research on how much that would cost, whether it's an interpreter or somebody else. You know, to have a look at that, but look on the website and see, because they've got a section all on that about it. So what additional support is there, resources when doing the application? So for that, we've got, from my side, then we're able to provide a sort of a check and send service. So if you drafted your application, you perhaps done it through the system and done it as an export to PDF, then you could send that to us. We can have a look at that, review it, give you some pointers and areas where you may need to improve it or add to it, you know, address certain things, or it may be just good to go. So we can do that assessment once we've got a bit more detail from you on what's there. Can someone apply for this even if they've been doing their craft business professionally for more than a year? Yeah, absolutely. It's just a minimum of a year. So this could be your, you know, this is what you do for your livelihood. And absolutely, if you can demonstrate that you're at that level now and that this is going to create a step change in your developmental process, enabling you to achieve other things, then yeah, no problem at all with that. So yes, I'm an MA student, but I have more than a year's experience in working as a freelance artist. So I think it's probably just worth, we might need to double check that with you being a current student. Yes, you've ticked the box for more than a year of a freelance artist, but let's just double check on that in terms of the education side of things. If I wanted to put in a joint application to work with other artists, can the bank account be just in one name? Or would we need to? No, it's got to be for an individual, and you can show that you want to collaborate with that other person, and it is about collaborative working, but the money can only go to one person as an individual. Does it cover equipment costs or just materials, training and marketing? Yeah, well, under those headings, so you've got the resources, equipment costs, yeah, all of that basically, as long as it fits in with that, because there is an other option as well, you know, so you might have some volunteer costs potentially that you maybe need to support, you know, and cover just on a daily £5 a day or something like that for subsistence and that sort of thing. So with funding being monitored, do we need to prove if accepted where the money has been spent? Yes, I would say you keep all your receipts, keep all the invoices, keep everything in one folder. It's good practice to do that anyway with any fund. You will be requested to give an overview. I don't think you need to send receipts to prove how you've spent every single penny, but keep them anyway. And then if there's been a change in what you budgeted for initially, so say you needed this piece of equipment, and when you got the funding for it, but when you went to purchase it, it had gone up by £100, then you can show that, you know, which means that actually £100 has to be taken out from some of the other area of your development. You might have to adjust then maybe a trip somewhere, or getting other resources or materials or things in to accommodate for that additional charge. So yeah, just be aware of the costs and what everything is. So on your spreadsheet, for monitoring purposes for you, what you can do is list out everything individually and then put, so that's your proposed cost for the funding, and then you can put in your actual costs when you've actually spent that money. And then you know what the difference is and where there might be a shortfall, in which case at the end you might be able to do something additional with that money. Or if it's gone slightly over budget, you'll be able to see where the additional spend has been and what that will impact then on the other things going forward. So to what email address should we send the application for proofreading? So the information, well, the invitation to come on here today, my email address is fine. You can also include Karen in this as well. Then we've both got it and it's not going to get missed then. No, never underspend, basically. Always find something else to spend it on. You never give money back. So hopefully that answers that question. Yeah, so like I say, you'll be able to track where you're spending things, and if there's a slight underspend, then you know that just allows you to do perhaps another research project or another field trip to go and visit a particular artist, or attend some galleries, or you know, go and see performances of that particular person. So you'll never underspend. You'll always find a way to spend all the money. Is there anything else from anybody else? If there isn't, if that's got everybody's questions answered, then thank you very much for attending. I hope that's given you a good overview and insight into what they're sort of looking for this. Without having particular examples instantly there to work with, it was a little bit challenging in order to be able to bring that exact wording and things for you. That will be able to be much clearer when we do the proofreading side of things. So yeah, absolutely, we can provide you with a lot more detail on your particular project, or we can do a half-hour call as well to identify, you know, work through some particular questions that you might have beyond this. So if you did want to do that, then please do get in touch. We'll send a copy of this out so you can have this as a recording, and then my details and things will be on there. Please connect with me on all the different platforms as well. You know, I'd be more than happy to share some of your work to the wider world as well through that. I think I've had, I don't know, oh, just had some thank yous. Yes, you will be able to watch the recording. It will be there, and it will be available through Karen and the team, and I think we're putting it on YouTube possibly, where it will be shared out through that platform as well. So one last thing, I won't be applying this time, but wanted the info as I intend to in the future. This was really helpful. Well, thank you so much. I'm glad it was. Please do keep in touch if you need the extra support going forward. And like I say, yeah, please use the resources that we're here to give you the help with. So I'm not sure on the next application window, but keep in touch with the Arts Council website, because they do the rounds quite regularly. I think the response and the decision on this will be found out in November time, I think. So make your plan for starting January or December, something like that, on your timeline. Okay, right. Okay, I think we might be about it with everything. So if that's all from everybody, thank you so much for attending. Really great to have you on board, and I look forward to hearing and reading lots of your lovely funding applications as we go forward. So that's great. Thank you very much. I'm going to end now. Appreciate all your time. Thank you so much.